Okay, President Obama stirred up a bit of a controversy over on the Reich by pointing out that when everybody votes, stuff gets done. As I pointed out earlier, the vast majority of Americans want Social Security expanded, not cut. The vast majority of Americans want to do away with free trade deals. They want to go back to the fair trade that's good for the United States. The vast majority of Americans would like big corporations broken up, particularly the banksters, but in every sector. But none of those things are going to happen because our political system is held captive by a party that is owned, the Republican Party, that is owned by probably fewer than 300 very, very wealthy people. A very small handful of very rich people are controlling this political party, the Republican Party, which now controls the United States. And they're saying, you will not do anything favorable to the United States, including making more people vote or helping more people to vote. In fact, what we're going to do is going to do everything we can to stop people from voting. So Paul Weyrich, who talks about, our leverage in the elections candidly goes up as the voting populace goes down. Paul Weyrich creates ALEC. ALEC creates these laws that make it harder for people to vote. They get passed in state after state after state, these voter suppression ID laws. And the president comes out and says, this is serious.
In Australia and some other countries, there's mandatory voting. It would be transformative if everybody voted. That would counteract money more than anything. If everybody voted, then it would completely change the political map in this country.
He is so right. Because the vast majority of Americans really, hold to an image of America that the Republican Party does not. They are in favor of political policies and economic policies that the Republican Party is not. And not just political policies, not just economic policies, social policies as well. And if everybody voted, then you'd have more poor people voting, you'd have more young people voting, you'd have more old people, you'd have more people of color voting, because those are the communities that don't vote as much as upper middle class white men. You'd have more single women voting. And the president made the mistake. Well, it's not even a mistake. He can't do anything that from the Republicans' point of view isn't a mistake. I don't think he made a mistake at all. I think it was a brilliant comment to say, in Australia, everybody has to vote. But of course, now all across the right-wing blogosphere, you will see, articles about how Obama wants to force you to vote. Obama wants to use the IRS to fine you if you don't vote. That's how they do it in Australia. Well, he wasn't suggesting that we should adopt the Australian system. It couldn't happen in the United States because you can't, the Supreme Court has many times ruled that the right to associate includes the right to not associate. The right, you're going to penalize people for voting. Well, the Supreme Court has in Bush v. Gore, they came right out and said there is no federally protected right to vote for president. There isn't. Sorry. So we, the Supreme Court, can take away Florida. We can take away your right to vote for the president. And in fact, a year later, in 2001, in November of 2001, when they actually counted the vote from Florida, keep in mind, it didn't get counted in 2000 because the Supreme Court stopped the count. When they actually counted the vote, they found that by any measure, Al Gore won the election. In Florida and nationally. Al Gore was our president in 2000. But the Supreme Court inserted themselves and changed these things. So with more people voting, we would see America become America once again. So here's the question. And this is something that I've been chewing on for 10 years or longer. And I'm not sure I have a good answer for it. In the United States, where the right not to vote is considered as constitutional as the right to vote. In other words, in the United States, you have a right not to vote. As Marco Rubio pointed out. Marco Rubio came out and said, well, it's not voting is a legitimate choice. See, the Republican plan for the vote in the United States is to encourage it to get worse. because, hey, the Republicans only need the votes of the rich white guys. But what should we be doing to encourage more people to vote? I mean, I think voting by mail, as they have in Oregon and Washington State, I think that's a good one. It's jacked Oregon's voter response rates up into the 60s, whereas the national average is in the 50s, as I recall, in some places in the 40% range. Vote by mail, big deal. Early voting, big deal. Automatic voter registration, what Oregon just passed and is going to start doing next year, a big deal. Make it straightforward. We can't use the IRS. We can't fine people for not voting. And we can't offer incentives. We can't say, if you vote, you will get something, because that's like paying people for their vote. So how else can we make it easier to vote? I don't know. Got any thoughts?